Hello guys and welcome to my promised Philidor Gambit video. Maybe some of you already know that I have a few opening series and the Philidor Gambit is one of the deadly opening traps and gambits. Before we start, you should know that the openings in this series are not entirely sound. However, it's important to note that these are not memes or joke openings that we surely lose if the opponent plays correctly. I usually call these openings playable, which means that if the opponent knows the most precise line, they could gain some advantage. But at the same time, these openings can be extremely dangerous weapons against the unprepared opponent, and especially in blitz and rapid games, they can work against mostly everyone. The model game for my repertoire comes from one of my father games. He is also FIDE Master like me and spent a lot of time studying the Philidor Gambit in the pre-computer era. He played this opening with confidence in classical OTB games, even against strong opponents like in the model game we will see. So in my opinion, if you are around the same level or lower, you can try the Philidor Gambit without any hesitation. I spent a lot of time wondering whether I should share the best line for white, but I decided not to show it. The reason is very simple. Everyone can check what the engine says, so finding the best continuation for white isn't a secret at all. However, in response to that, I have found an extremely sharp piece sacrificed for black, which could easily turn the tables if white can't find the right moves, something that's very difficult, especially in blitz and rapid games, of course. So if you are curious about the white strongest continuation and my counter to it, you can order the entire repertoire for just a few bucks in PGN format. For more details, check the video description, but now let's get started. Okay, so the Philidor Gambit starts with the e4, e5, knight f3, d6 move order. And now, if we would like to get to the Philidor Gambit, white has to play d4. Otherwise, white can play a simple bishop c4 or knight c3, which could lead us to kind of Italian opening setup. We will talk about that later because there is a huge difference if we start with this moving order. So d4, and our move is the bishop g4. And of course, the most popular continuation here is taking the pawn on e5. More or less, there is not too much else beside that one. So white takes the pawn, and my suggestion for this line starts with knight d7. Of course, if we check the database, we can find some games with knight c6, but it could be a bit different. I'm not a big fan of that, because if we develop the knight to c6, it could be good, but at the same time, white can develop his white bishop to b5 in these cases. And for me, it's kind of uncomfortable, so I really prefer the knight d7. And if we check the database for this position, we can find that even Blackburn has played this gambit in the 19th century, but to be honest, it didn't become very popular. Not too many people spend time with analyzing this variation, but we did, so that's what I wanted to show you in this video. Okay, so white has a few options here. For me, I prefer to start with the main line, and after that we will get back to the minor ones. So taking the pawn, of course, has to be the challenge for black. In any other cases, if the material can remain even, then probably black has to be more than okay. We take back with the bishop, of course, and now white can play three different moves. h3, bishop h5. We are not talking about that much because including this pair of moves is practically insignificant. We will see it in the future. So white can play knight c3 or white can play bishop e2. They are kind of the same with some minor changes, but let's have a look for the main line as I said before. Bishop e2, queen e7 with the tempi, of course, because the e4 is hanging. So white has to protect the pawn on e4 with knight c3. Until here, I think it's pretty normal. So, I mean, if you do not know the opening and if you face someone who plays the Philidor Gambit, probably most people would do this moving order with white too, because it's kind of natural. There is nothing special here. Black castles to the long side, to the queen side. White also castles is pretty natural, and knight c5. And this is the plan. What we want to do with the Philidor Gambit. We would like to open up the d file, so the white queen could find himself in a very off-guard situation, because now the bishop h2 discovering is just hanging, and we will take down the queen. So it's kind of difficult to do anything for white in this case. And also don't forget that that the e4 pawn is also hanging. So if we can make the gambit until here, in this position black is just fine. So it's started to be extremely dangerous for white. And to be honest, we didn't do any special yet. So you can imagine it's kind of easy to earn this position. In this game, white played bishop d3 because, of course, he didn't want to lose the queen. Knight f6, very natural development move. The e4 is hanging once again. White played bishop e3 here, and in this case, black could take the pawn on e4. Probably rook e1 would be a better solution, but in this case, bishop e5 would be very strong. h3, and black can go back to bishop h5, followed by rook e8 from the h file. But also there is a very interesting move that I wanted to note for sure, that when white already castled to the short side, we have to consider the h5 move all the times, because most of the time it works. So even here we can choose the h5 move, and it's a bit more sharp, but we can try it for sure. Otherwise we can just go back, and after rook e8, black has excellent compensation for the sacrifice material. And even because the c3 and the e4 is also hanging, probably black will take back something very soon. So we get back until here, and white played bishop e3. Black took the pawn. It was an exchange. Black took it again. Rook e1, very natural following move. f5, and now we have a huge horse outpost on e4, or it's kind of an outpost, we can say. There is a very annoying pin, or on f3, the position is open up. We have the bishop pair facing the opponent's king, so I'm pretty sure that black's position is more than satisfactory here. And yes, probably white made a mistake with taking the a7 pawn, but to be honest, it's kind of difficult to make any move for him right now, because h3 could face with changing the knight, and rook f8, and it's a fantastic position for black, if you ask me. Probably there would be only one solution for white to come out from this bind, and that would be bishop g5. And taking the g5, knight g5, taking the queen, exchange on e4, and we could get this position. And this position is kind of even. Black enjoys the bishop pair, so probably it's still fine from both sides, but that was a bit hard to find, I guess. So white went for this pawn on a7. Probably that was a poison pawn, if we can say that. Queen f7, black went out from the pin, and of course he's preparing queen h5, and he will have a great attack on the king side. And queen e2 was the first real proper mistake with white, but we cannot blame him, probably because it's like it wasn't too easy to find a better solution. Rook e8, bishop b5, And now it's I think the game is already over, because of course black would like to jump away with the knight and open up the e line. But for example, if white decides to go for bishop e3, black also has knight c5, and now the f4 is a threat. So queen d1 is an only move, and queen g6, and that's a much better position for black. Black is attacking on the king side. The rooks are just amazing in the center. The queen has a really annoying position on d1. So if you ask me, the game is kind of over. It's really hard to find any compensation for white. So we go back until bishop b5. That was what white played, c6, and he made a sacrifice on c6, b6, bishop b7, and he tries to get some counterplay chances on the queen side, which could be smart if you ask me, because you know, if you have a very bad position, if you have a kind of a losing position, then in my opinion it's better to do something, to risk something, because with time you will lose the game for sure. So at least you have to try. It's nothing to lose. You are already in a losing position. So that's what white did, and he could be okay, but he didn't have luck, because knight c5 is just too strong and too precise, and now white remains without any counterplay chances. Queen f1 happened in the game, bishop f3, bishop d8, and queen h5. It's just deadly from here. h3, bishop e2, g4, only move, taking the g4, rook e2, queen e2, and queen h3. And white played queen d1, and after that he resigned because he gets checkmate. But to be honest, probably is nothing better here. Black has many moves which will finish the game. Doesn't matter what white does. So that was our model game, which was played by two FIDE Masters. The black one was my father. The white one was also a strong FIDE Master, and the game remained only 24 moves, which is just amazing to win in 24 moves with the black pieces. And it was an OTB game. It was a classical OTB game. So you can imagine, if it's playable against the FIDE Master, then you know, probably you can also give it a try. Okay, so let's get back until the beginning, and until here, and let's see some of the most important lines. Taking the pawn, knight e7. We are here. I just wanted to show you for sure, which is extremely important, e d6, bishop d6, and what happens if white starts with knight c3, queen e7. Of course, we always do the same, it's nothing special. Bishop e2 would transpose into the main line. But what happens, what's the difference if white plays bishop d3? And now in this case, he tries to close the d file for our rook, so it's going to be a bit different. Castle, castle. And in this case, if white managed to put the bishop to d3 and close the d line, he will have other problems. There is a pin which will be very annoying for him after knight e5. So in these cases, if the bishop is on d3, our knight will go to e5 instead of c5. And now it's super bad for white, because bishop e2 of course is losing, because after the exchange we take the queen on d1. He can say goodbye to his queen. Otherwise he can play knight d5, but it doesn't help, because after queen e6 this pin on f3 is just deadly, and there is no way that white can escape from that one. Okay, so that was one of the most important line. We were talk about the bishop e2, I think. We were talk about the knight c3, bishop d3. As I mentioned before, the h3 is nothing special. We go back to h5, and it's kind of the same positions will come up after that one. So we don't have to talk about that. Okay, so what else we have? In this position, white can play some other moves, but in my opinion, those are not a big deal. So for example, if he plays bishop e2, we have two options. We can take with the pawn, but in this case, white can take the pawn, and if you don't want to sacrifice a pawn, we have another option, but of course you can get into this position too, because I think it's extremely sharp. Black sacrificed the pawn, but he has amazing compensation for the sacrifice material. The pieces are playing, but if you would like to choose something more solid, then for bishop e2 you can just take the knight. White takes the knight on f3-2, taking the e5, and we just develop our pieces naturally, and black has no problem at all. So it's the position is kind of even, nothing special, so white couldn't get any advantage in the opening, which is, in my opinion, it's good enough for us. Okay, so I think it's the same here. So white can also play h3, but in this case we can just go back if we want, but also there is an alternative option, taking the knight. Queen takes the knight, taking the pawn, bishop c4, queen f6, queen e2, and bishop c5 with a satisfactory position. But we can also choose bishop h5 if we would like to transpose into the main line after that one, of course, and it's going to be the same moves. After knight d7, we also have this e6 move. When I was a child, I faced with this e6 move one time. It cannot consider as bad, so it's not a blunder or something. It's totally playable. But to be honest, if white has to play something like that, probably there is nothing to be afraid from. We take the pawn with the f pawn, of course, bishop e2, knight f6, knight c3, and this is the move that I really like, queen e7. Of course, not bishop e7, because that could face with some knight g5 and it could be annoying, but after queen e7 we can play c6, we can play g6, and black's position is very comfortable. I think I would play this position without any hesitation. Black is more than fine. So e6 is also not a big deal, and I think that's what I wanted to talk about the main lines. And as I said in the beginning, I'm not going to show white's most dangerous continuation in this video. You can order the full repertory and you can have a look, and also to my answer for that. So we go back until here, and there is one more thing that I have to mention, which is very, very interesting. Many white people do not want to get into this gambit, and they prefer to have an Italian setup because they think it's more easy to play and there is less traps in that. And that can happen here too if white plays with bishop c4 and they don't want to play d4 for a while, for sure. And I have a very nice move here, which is important to note, important to learn and remember, which is knight f6. And why is it so special, you can ask. And now take a look on its venomous bite. Because if I check my database, most of the people here, most of the white people here play knight g5, but knight g5 is close to losing. It's a blunder here, and they think that the f7 can be protected, but we have a really nice maneuver which not only saves the day, but black gets the advantage after that. It's d5. White has to take the pawn on d5 and h6. Now it's important to make this move before we take back the d5. There is only one space for the knight, and it's f3, and now e4, of course. And another interesting thing to note, that white can play knight e5 or knight d4, but most of the people played queen e2 in this position, which is losing. So let's have a look on knight d4 first. Here black can play c6 because of course it's untouchable since the d4 is hanging. So knight c3, taking the pawn, there is a check, knight d7, and black is already slightly better and we cannot wish for more in the opening. Or white can play knight e5. In this case, actually black has many options. Some people prefer to play bishop d6. I think queen a7, for me, somehow it's more natural. d4, taking the pawn. f4 is an only move. Knight b d7, castle, exchange, and there is an important check, king h1, and taking the d5, and black is more than fine. After that we can play something like bishop e7 and it has to be okay. But let's get back until here, and after e4 most of the people played queen e2. I said it seems pretty natural, but it's very close to losing, because black has an amazing move here, which is bishop b4, and now it's really hard to make any moves here, because why is it so interesting? Now we prevented white to play d3, which could be his solution for the bind, but now it's not possible. And if he wants to do something, for example castle or a3, doesn't matter, probably a3 is more interesting, we just castle very fast, and now he has problem on the f3. He can take the bishop now, of course, but in this case we take the knight and we will have a juicy check on e8 with the rook, and black is much better here. So yes, this is the poison in this knight f6 move, because the knight g5 doesn't work, and it's really important. But you have to remember this d5 h6 maneuver. So let's get back until here. Let's imagine that white knows that knight g5 is not working, so he can choose d3 or he can choose knight c3. There is a small difference. If he plays d3, then I think it's more comfortable for us, because now probably he's not going to play d4 anymore, so we can play bishop e7, castle, castle, c3, and we have c6, and it's really important to know. So compared to the Italian opening, black has this pawn c6 instead of knight c6, and this gives us more flexibility in the position, because after that we can play b5, a5, or we can do something in the center with d5, so it's just more flexible. And the last line what I wanted to talk about is knight c3 here, and now it's also important to learn this moving order, because probably bishop e7 could face with d4 in this position, which is absolutely not bad at all, but this arrives to a classical Philidor defense, which by the way I really like and enjoy to play. But if you do not want to learn one more extra opening, then for knight c6 you can play bishop e6, and in this case white has to play d3 or has to exchange, but he is not going to be able to play d4. So he has to take the bishop, we take back the bishop, The d3 is not that not a big deal here, because c5 is good enough, and after that black has a super comfortable position. Or white can play immediately d4. In this case we can exchange queen d7, knight c6, and black has a comfortable position once again. So I think that's all what I wanted to tell you about this Philidor Gambit. And if you like this video, and if you would like to study this opening, just leave me a message, because the repertory is ready, and there I will talk about that white's best continuation, and what can black do against that. Thanks for watching. Bye.